You wake up tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind of tired that feels like you're dragging a stranger's life through your body. Your calendar is full. Your phone keeps buzzing. You're moving. You're doing. You're functioning. But inside, you're fading. Your smile doesn't belong to you anymore. Your dreams don't excite you. Your voice sounds like it was scripted by someone else. You've become a ghost in your own existence. And the worst part? You didn't even notice it happening. Carl Jung saw this long before it became a cultural epidemic. He called it the danger of the persona, the social mask you build to survive in the world. At first, it protects you, but eventually, it becomes you. You start playing roles, being what others expect, chasing what looks good, feels safe, earns applause, and slowly, without a scream, without a collapse, you stop living your life. You start living someone else's. Let's get real for a second. Think about your job, your relationships, your daily routine, your beliefs, your ambitions. How many of them were chosen by you? Not out of fear, guilt, or conditioning, but from truth. Silence. That silence, that's your real self trying to speak. But it can't. Because you've been performing for so long, you forgot what your own voice even sounds like. Let me ask you something brutal. What would happen if you stopped being who they expect you to be? Not slowly, not gradually, but right now. What if you dropped the act, refused the job, said the thing, left the room, ended the relationship, walked away from the version of yourself they've all gotten used to? What would be left? Who would be left? Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But here's what no one tells you. Becoming who you are requires killing who you've been. And that's terrifying, because the false self you've been carrying around, it kept you safe. It made you likable. It kept the chaos away. It helped you fit in. It got you love, even if it was fake. So the idea of letting it go, it feels like death. And in a way, it is. You're not tired because you've done too much. You're tired because you've betrayed yourself too many times. You said yes when your soul screamed no. You smiled when you wanted to walk out. You stayed when every part of you was begging to leave. And over time, those tiny betrayals built a prison. One that looks exactly like a normal life. Here's what Jung feared most: that most people would go their entire lives never realizing they weren't actually living, just performing for their families, their careers, their religions, their roles. And when the performance finally breaks, when the mask starts slipping, they call it burnout, or depression, or a midlife crisis. But Jung called it something else. He called it the awakening of the self. Because beneath the persona, beneath the people-pleaser, beneath the identity you've been dragging around like armor, there is someone else, someone angry, someone tired of being polite, someone who doesn't want to play the game anymore, someone who wants to feel something real, even if it means burning the whole damn script. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're in a crowded room. Everyone's laughing, drinking, talking. You're smiling. You're on. But then something happens. It's subtle, a flicker of thought. And suddenly, you're watching yourself from across the room. You're not there anymore. You're just pretending to be there. That split, that disconnection, that's the soul saying, "This isn't me. This isn't mine." And that, right there, is the beginning of freedom. Not when you fix your life, not when you find your passion, but when you finally admit, "I've been living someone else's life." Your father's dreams, your culture's expectations, society's timeline, Instagram's definitions, your partner's comfort zone, your past self's fear. But not yours. Not anymore. This is the question that will haunt you until you answer it honestly. Who are you when no one's watching? When you don't have to perform? When you're not being productive? When you don't have to be liked? When nothing is owed, expected, or judged? Who are you then? That silence? That unease? That flicker of panic? That's not confusion. That's clarity. For the first time in a long time, your real self is stirring. So let me ask it one last time. What if the reason you're tired, lost, or numb isn't because something is wrong with you, but because your life has been built on someone else's blueprint? And what if the only way to truly live is to destroy everything that was never really you? Most people are not alive. They're simply behaving in ways that avoid rejection, conflict, or loneliness, behaving to be accepted, to be loved, to be useful. But here's what Carl Jung discovered. Something so disturbing, so real, he buried it beneath layers of theory, symbolism, and warning. The persona is what one is not, but what oneself and others think one is. In other words, the face you show to the world is a lie. And the more convincing the lie becomes, the more disconnected you grow from the truth inside. This is the hidden truth. You're not exhausted from living. You're exhausted from pretending. Pretending to care about things that bore you. Pretending to believe in things you outgrew. Pretending to want what you're supposed to want. It's a subtle form of psychological suicide. Not with a gun, not with pills, but with obedience. You obey the script, the job, the relationship, the personality, and you wonder why you feel dead inside. The persona was never meant to become your identity. It was supposed to be a mask, a tool, not a prison. But most people confuse the mask for the mirror. They look at their career, their followers, their relationship status, and they say, "This is who I am." But Jung would scream, "No, that's who you've become to be accepted. Who you really are. That's buried in the silence, in the dreams you keep ignoring, in the rage you keep swallowing, in the sadness you joke away, in the voice you silence every time you say, 'I'm fine.'" Jung wrote about this in his work on individuation, the process of becoming your whole self. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he never said it would be easy, because to become whole, you have to face your shadow. And your shadow? That's all the parts of you you've hidden to be liked. The anger, the lust, the selfishness, the wildness, the grief, all the things that made other people uncomfortable, so you buried them. But what you bury doesn't die. It rots. And one day, it leaks through the cracks in your anxiety, your depression, your random breakdowns, your chronic fatigue. It's not random. It's rebellion. Your real self is revolting against the mask. This is why the tiredness you feel doesn't go away with sleep. It goes away with truth. You don't need another vacation. You don't need a spa day. You don't need to change your job or drink more water. You need to stop lying about who you are. And yes, lying includes staying silent. Because every time you swallow your truth, you feed your shadow. Jung understood the deep paradox of the human psyche, that we long to be seen, but we fear being known. So we build a persona, something clean, something presentable, something safe. But deep down, we know it's a performance. And like all performances, it gets exhausting. So what happens? You burn out. You stop feeling alive. You lose passion. Your relationships become routines. Your career becomes a cage. Your smile becomes muscle memory. And no one notices. Because the persona is still smiling, still posting, still producing, still doing well. But inside, you're screaming, "This isn't me." This is where Jung's work becomes dangerous, because he wasn't trying to make you feel better. He was trying to wake you up. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Because facing your soul? It means killing your comfort, breaking relationships, changing your entire way of being, confronting the fact that you've spent years building a life you secretly hate. It means making terrifying choices like saying no, walking away, telling the truth, starting over, being misunderstood. And that's why most people never do it, because the mask pays better than the truth. But here's the twist. The longer you wear the mask, the heavier it gets, until one day you can't carry it anymore. And when it cracks, you'll either break down or break free. That's where you are now, isn't it? At the edge. Not because you're lost, but because you're finally seeing that the road you're on was never yours to begin with. And that's not a breakdown. It's an invitation to stop living someone else's life, to stop chasing someone else's dreams, to stop saying what you're supposed to say, and instead to descend, to go inward, to meet your shadow, to speak your truth, to build something real. This is the path Jung laid out. It's not neat, it's not fast, it's not safe, but it's the only path that leads to your actual self. So you finally said it. This isn't me. And now everything is shaking. You stopped pretending. You said no. You quit the job. You stopped showing up just to be polite. You walked away from the people who expected you to stay the same forever. And now, it's quiet. Uncomfortably quiet. Because when you begin living your truth, the world you built from lies begins to fall apart. Let's be brutally honest. They don't tell you what comes after the awakening. Not in therapy. Not in the books. Not in the self-help podcasts. They sell you healing, like it's a sunrise. Warm. Bright. Beautiful. But real healing, it feels like a funeral. Because now, you're not just losing people. You're losing versions of yourself. The you who kept your mouth shut to keep the peace. The you who smiled through spiritual exhaustion. The you who said yes while dying inside. The you who tolerated noise to avoid loneliness. The you they loved, but only because you were predictable. All of that? Gone. And here's what no one wants to admit. You will lose people. Yes, even the ones you love. Maybe especially the ones you love. Because when you stop performing, when you stop playing the role, they won't know what to do with the real you. They'll say, "You've changed. You're not as fun anymore. You're so distant now. You think you're better than us? No, Mawa. You're just done playing small, so other people feel big." Here's the real kicker. You didn't become distant. They just stopped recognizing you without your mask. You see, when you were a reflection of their comfort, they adored you. But when you became a mirror of their own limitations, they pulled away. You didn't betray them. You just finally stopped betraying yourself. Carl Jung warned of this very moment. He wrote about individuation, the process of becoming a whole person. But it doesn't come with applause. It comes with resistance. Why? Because the old world benefits from the old you. The workplace loved your silence. Your friends loved your availability. Your family loved your obedience. Your partner loved your compliance. Your community loved your role. Now that you've stopped playing along, they're uncomfortable. And instead of asking what's changed, they label you difficult, arrogant, cold, rebellious, selfish. But deep down, they're just afraid. Because your authenticity threatens their illusion. You'll also face something else. Emptiness. Not depression, not sadness, just space. You cleared the clutter, you cut the noise, you silenced the fakeness. Now what? You're alone with you. And that's terrifying, because for years, your entire identity was built on being needed, accepted, and approved. Now, You're becoming someone who doesn't need any of that to exist. That emptiness, it's not a problem. It's a portal. Through it, the real self enters. But be warned, you'll be tempted to go back. Back to the fake laughter. Back to the easy yes. Back to the crowd that claps for the mask, not the soul. And in those moments, you must remember, returning to who you were will cost you everything you've become. Don't go back just because it's quiet now, because eventually that silence will begin to speak. And when it does, you'll feel it, the calm in your breath, the sharpness in your boundaries, the power in your no, the clarity in your solitude, the beauty in your loneliness, because it's honest. There's also something else. You'll start triggering people. Not because you're rude, not because you're dramatic, but because your existence without the mask is loud. You'll walk into rooms and they'll feel tension, not from what you say, but from what you no longer allow. They won't understand why they're uncomfortable, but you will, because the version of you that used to dim your light to keep them warm, she's gone. Now you show up fully, and your presence says, I'm not available for nonsense. The result? Fewer people, fewer conversations, fewer distractions, but deeper presence, deeper peace, deeper connection with yourself and those who really see you. You'll no longer ask, do they like me? You'll ask, do I feel like myself around them? That's the shift. And it's irreversible. Carl Jung believed this was sacred. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration. You're not rejecting the old you. You're integrating the part that was never allowed to exist. And yes, there are consequences, but they're worth it. Because now you live without apology, without disguise, without performing. You live as you. So if everything's falling apart, if you feel lonely, misunderstood, distant, unstable, it's okay. You're not breaking. You're shedding. You're not alone. You're just surrounded by things you've outgrown. And you're not failing. You're finally becoming someone who doesn't need the world to agree with their truth. You don't just wake up one day and feel whole. You don't just find yourself like a lost key under the couch. You remember yourself in pieces, in silence, in the wreckage of who you pretended to be. That's where it begins. Not in the light, but in the ashes. So now, you're standing here. No mask, no applause, no familiar routine. Just you. And the question, now what? Carl Jung called this moment the individuation threshold. It's the turning point between performance and presence, between the false self and the true one. It's not about changing who you are. It's about unbecoming everything you're not. Let's break it down raw. This is how you begin to live your own life. 1. Stop asking for permission. You've been conditioned to seek approval for your truth, to explain your choices, to justify your growth, to water yourself down for easier digestion. That ends here. You don't need permission to rest, walk away, change your mind, say, I don't know. Set boundaries. Start over. Choose silence. You were not born to be digestible. You were born to be undeniably real. 2. Kill the script. You were handed a script the moment you were born. what to believe, who to love, what success looks like, what a good person does. And like an actor, you learned your lines. But now you rewrite the role. Now you say, I'm not following a script. I'm writing my own mythology. Every time you choose authenticity over performance, you break the system. And that's the most powerful rebellion there is. 3. Let people be disappointed. They won't get it. They'll guilt you, call you selfish, say you've changed. And they're right. You have changed. You stopped shrinking. You stopped saying yes just to be loved. You stopped choosing comfort over truth. Let them be confused. Let them be upset. Let them talk. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be free. 4. Build your own rituals. The world told you to hustle, to grind, to be productive, to stay busy. But that's how you stayed distracted from yourself. Now, you create silence, stillness, slowness. You journal. You walk alone. You breathe with no goal. You create, not for content, but for communion. You become your own sanctuary. 5. Choose depth over everything. Surface connections won't satisfy you anymore. Small talk will bore you. Fame won't move you. Validation will feel cheap. You'll start craving something else. Conversations that expand you. People who speak from the soul. Art that makes you feel alive. Moments that leave you speechless. Truth that tastes like blood. This is what happens when you stop performing. You stop reaching for more and start going deeper. 6. Forgive the old. You don't hate the version of you that played along. That version kept you alive. Forgive the smiles. Forgive the silence. Forgive the staying. Forgive the pretending. That was survival. This is rebirth. And rebirth means honoring every version of you that got you here, even the false ones, because they weren't fake. They were fragments. And now, you've come home. Carl Jung didn't write for the masses. He wrote for the few, the ones willing to descend, to lose everything unreal, and walk out of the fire naked and whole. He wrote for you. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But it's more than a privilege. It's a revolution. You're not tired anymore. You're not confused. You're not broken. You're just done. Done living a life that doesn't reflect your soul. Done being who they need you to be. Done playing a role that earns praise but kills your truth. You're not escaping. You're arriving. So the next time they ask, why are you different? Why are you distant? Why are you so quiet now? You smile and say, because I stopped living someone else's life. And now the only question that matters is this: when will you finally start living yours? Comment below. I'm done living for others. If this video hit something real inside you, like it. Share it with someone who's still lost in the performance. Subscribe to Psychatic, where we don't motivate you. We wake you up. And if you want to support what we do, tap the Super Thanks button to help us keep building content that frees the mind.